Hello, everyone. It's Mischievous Heathen. I'm just waiting on Ronald Gogan to do our second part of our discussion. And if you want, oh, here he is. Look at that. I didn't have to wait even that long. We're already live. I keep.
Oh, wow.
You came on like 10 seconds after I hit the start button.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have. Was that?
You can't write that stuff. That's reality TV right there.
I didn't have sufficient time to badmouth you while you were not before you came on. I mean, come on, get out, star. How's she doing?
Oh, she's great. She's gotten everything out of her, I guess.
Hey.
I no longer have a carrier because it's got feces all over it, so that's great.
Oh man. Oh, that's that kind of yeah. Woo. I remember those.
Parenting is awesome.
Yeah, there was a time where I, for a good few years, where my niece was about a year old, from about the time she was 3, where I took care of her, and I worked during nights and took care of her during the day until my brother came home, and I was not equipped for babies. I was not good. I mean, and I was only like part-time, quasi, parental authority. You're a 24/7, so there's no comparison.
Oh yeah, it's fun though. It's really fun having a little clone of yourself running around. Well, she's not running around yet, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, pretty soon she'll be online yelling at me.
Oh yeah.
Pretty soon she'll be online.
Say atheism stupid. No, I'm just kidding. That was a total joke. Just indoctrinate my child into thinking that everyone that doesn't believe in Christ is retarded. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that.
No worries, dude. If there's anything
hopefully
learned from me is I can take a joke.
That's good.
He's like, no, but seriously, they suck. I gotta say, I was prepared for a lot more fire and brimstone than this, to be honest with you. Like
I said, I haven't gone in a while, but I usually meet up with about 14 to 20 other atheists at a bar. So
gotcha. There's a couple
conversations, fairly civil.
There's a couple of things that I've never met a civil presupper, and that's not even a joke. Honestly, like that is not even a joke.
Maybe I'm not worthy of the title.
And it's almost a bad word in the great debate, quote unquote. I say quote unquote, because the people that tend to adopt this particular argument style, or however you want to put it, they tend to do it from a standpoint where X didn't work. Y didn't work, Z didn't work. This seems sort of like the easy way to do it. You know what I mean?
The lazy man apologetics is what I call it.
Well, I don't know what the motives are, but I'm just kidding. I'm just saying, everyone seems to do it. So a lot of times we'll be like, oh, so and so's trying to presup me. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a pejorative in a certain sense. But I do have, and I'm gonna put this up on camera real quick. Hi, it's me. So I actually wrote down a list, right? These are my notes I was taking earlier. You can't see it, but this is what I was prepared for with the precept. Answers question with a question. Deflect and dodge. The side 10 favorite. I'll be happy to answer that, but they never really answer it. And then, last but not least, bold assertions. So I didn't know. I thought you were gonna be like maybe a Eric Hovind type or a Cy 10 type. So I was like, oh, let me take a little tally. And then, because there's one thing that's always funny to me is Cy 10 does this a lot, where he goes, I'll be happy to answer that, but and then he bogs you down with like, how do you know that for the next 45 minutes? And then he goes, I'll be happy to answer that, but, and then, so, can I ask you a question? I was thinking about this when I was walking my dog. You and I can both agree on some level that Cy 10 isn't probably the best representative of precept. Am I okay in saying that, or do you?
I think he's probably, what I'd like to say, probably the best at putting it into practice, maybe, but I don't even know if that's a fair way of saying it, just because he's out there so much. He videotapes himself, he does all this stuff, and he gets a lot of notoriety. So I mean, I've read books from Dr. Greg Bonson, Dr. Scott Oliphant, and all these guys that are really brilliant. And you could watch a debate like Dr. James White, who's a presuppositionalist, or he would say that he argues from that perspective. And even there's the movie Collision. Have you ever seen that with Christopher Hitchens and Douglas Wilson?
No.
That's a great movie. They both go around the country debating one another. And Douglas Wilson is he would say probably precept as well. And they go around having debates in bars and college universities and stuff like that. So I think those guys are probably more studied, maybe.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got Dr. Van Til and Dr. Jason Lyle that have this is what they did their master and doctorate work in. So they're a little more, on the scholarly side, but I think Cy maybe does a better job because he even admits, that he's not like an intelligent guy. He said he was like a factory worker and kind of left a high paying job to go do this full time. He's not like, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but this is so obvious. I think him and I would agree this is so obvious. I think that anybody should be able to do it. And even you say a lot of people fall back on some of the stuff that's like, well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? But there are some parts of presuppositional apologetics that are fairly deep and complicated and not easy to understand, especially when you do when you do start putting it in practice. I don't know.
My problem with the presup in general, and I think it has a very bad rap here on Google Plus and YouTube because, like I said, the people that adopt it are generally really condescending, at least from my experience. So I'm glad to see you're not that guy.
Well, look what Cy says, and I don't know if you've ever heard him say this, but he says, like himself, he was a huge evidentialist guy, and I was too. You look at my bookshelf, and you have, I have tactics from Greg Koukl and Lee Strobel and Anthony Flew and all these different books, Christianity on Trial, The Case for Christ. I have a plethora of I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, Frank Turek. So I was a huge presuppositional guy. I have Bertrand Russell on my shelf right here and Richard Dawkins, and so I was a huge evidentialist guy. But I didn't really like argue with people from the evidentialist side. But Cy did, and a lot of Christians do, and this is why I don't like evidence, is because you go back and forth. Here's my evidence. I lay it on the table. You give your evidence, and we go back and forth, and we're like, oh, this is the good evidence. This is the good evidence. This will convince them, whether it's an atheist or Christian. This is the evidence. This is the evidence, and we bring it to the table. Doesn't work, and maybe Christians feel like, oh man, I've gotten beat up so much trying to go through this evidential approach, and like, oh hey, this precept thing, this is really amazing, and I can beat people over the head with this. So they go out, like Cy says, he literally says, like, going out to return the favor. I've been beaten over the head. Evidentialist standpoint, now let me go out and do the same thing and beat atheists over the head with this new apologetic approach. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it's not new though. His version.
Right. Oh no, it's not. It's not new, but it is getting more popular.
Right. But on his CD or his DVD, he says that.
Which one?
I don't remember which one. He's speaking to some students in like a small kind of classroom.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he says it in every DVD, but I've seen the clip. It's on YouTube. But he says the precept, speaking about the one that he's actually using, or his version of it, isn't designed to convince anybody. It's designed to shut the mouth of the non-believer. And I can try to find it and then bring it up. It's a clip on his DVD, but
yeah. I don't doubt he said it. I don't know if I agree with that.
I was going to ask you, do you agree with that? Because I don't know, even if you get someone to, even if I've seen people get, I don't say victimized by the precept, by the rabbit hole that you get bogged down into. But at the end of the day, right, that person still isn't any closer to Christ, and if is the goal. It seems like his motivation, at least partly, like you said, to return the favor, to give it back, to if he's getting sort of the straight arm when it comes to evidentialism, it sounds like he's trying to do the same thing. Like get whoever he's arguing with to a point where they, either don't know enough about the philosophy or whatever, and then he can be like, aha, you can't account for X, Y, Z, therefore your whole worldview is absurd, and all that good stuff. I don't know. You said you don't agree with that, but I mean, if you really want me to, I can look it up. I don't think it's that important. You can.
Oh,
Google
no,
it.
I believe you.
But his attitude is what turned people off to even listening to it, at least partially. I even very good.
I would sometimes agree with that, but I've even seen him at times where very, very gentle and loving when talking to people, and as a Christian, like, man, can you see me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sitting here messing with this stupid thing. So,
Your house.
what's up?
Now you have the opposite camera. I'm seeing your kids.
There we go. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, the thing is, Psy is not perfect, and that's not the claim, I would hope, of any Christian. I know maybe some do say that, but obviously we're not perfect, and we're going to make mistakes in our approaches and the way in which we deal with people. So, and I don't know, I'm not in a situation, it could be kind of hard when people get hostile with you. And I've had hostile conversations with unbelievers. I've had somebody tell me, I think he said, has anybody ever told you could benefit from a good, butt whooping? Except for, he didn't say butt. And I was like, wow. I was like, we were sitting here having a conversation, and he just like said that out of nowhere. I was like, I was like, that's really rude. We're sitting here in a bar having a conversation, and just kind of whip that out. And so, but I can get it. I mean, we're not talking about cars or video games or anything like that. We're talking something probably a little more heavy than even politics. And there's a reason why they say don't talk about politics or religion at work. These are very close held beliefs, whether it's on the Christian side, atheists, Buddhists, Muslim. These are precious held beliefs about the world. This is how when we get up in the morning, we walk throughout the day, this is how we view the world. We look at the world through these lenses. Either I'm an atheist living in a naturalistic universe, and I interpret everything I see, and I go about my day, and I watch movies with this worldview. And I know you don't like worldview, but this is how we see the world. So you're attacking something very precious and dear to me. So people can get heated. It's a very sensitive topic, and it's why it's not talked about at work.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's a bit of I don't know. The reason I don't like the word worldview is because it seems to be the purpose of it is to just put people in a box, right? And when it comes to, for example, atheism isn't, you would probably disagree, but atheism isn't my worldview per se. It's a part of my worldview because I have many beliefs about other things that are, that are not necessarily tied to religion and stuff. I understand from the Presupper standpoint, there's a sort of, I'm not saying you, but I've heard others say there's a mindset, there's the Christian worldview, and then everything else, essentially, because from what I heard from Presuppers, only Christianity can account for the rules of intelligibility, reality, and all that good stuff, which I've heard many Presuppers say, but never demonstrate. So I don't know how one would even demonstrate that. It's because what Matt Dillahunty said at the end of his debate with Cy 10 is, when you make a statement like that flat-out statement, you're not only saying that about all current religions, you're saying about all past religions and about all religions that will possibly be in the future, all other worldviews, And so I don't know how someone could actually make that claim.
Well, from a Christian perspective, it doesn't seem too bold of a claim, but I could see why. So as somebody that obviously used to be atheist, agnostic, or whatever, could see like, whoa, that's kind of a bold, and maybe even like, oh, that's rude. That's very, arrogant of you. But I don't think from the way I see it, it's not arrogance to me. It's more like 2 + 2 has always equaled 4 in the past. It will equal 4 in the future. It equals 4 now. It's not something that's changed. This is truth. It's not something that's subject to change as cultures change. So from the way I see it, truth in my world does not change. Truth is always truth. There's nothing that, it's not like an opinion.
I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't necessarily use math as a good analogy, though, because depending on what type of math you use, 2 + 2 probably doesn't always equal 4. I get what you're saying, though.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of math you're talking about. 2 + 2 does not always equal 4.
No, well, there's different
normal math, not Common Core.
Right. There's math. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying I've heard there's different like logical systems, right? You know, in any given logical system, you know, there's a certain set of never mind. So anyway, gosh, there was something else, dude. When I was walking my dog, and I wanted to ask you, I totally forgot. But before I do forget, because we're kind of speaking about the precept and all this stuff in a sort of meta kind of, you know, in a meta way. We're not exactly debating, which I generally don't do anyway, because it ends up being, like I said, a big argument and people end up hating each other. But after this is over, I would be open to doing that if you had a particular, like if you wanted to talk about epistemology specifically, for example, in the future hangout. That way you can ask me all your cool questions and stuff. And so, you know, do you understand why it's referred to as a script? Do you understand, or do you take that as a straight pejorative?
No, I understand why it's a script, but I mean, you could always change the format of the questions, but there's a reason why that the same questions are kind of used over and over again by different precept guys. I mean, it's better to understand the language than it is to understand different catchphrases and stuff like that. But maybe the catchphrases are just a little bit easier, take a little less time to learn than the language of presuppositional apologetics.
One of the big detractions from precept is when the presupper's doing his thing, right? Because the same questions are asked in the same way. I mean, verbatim. Like, I wasn't joking. Excuse me. I wasn't trying to pick on you per se, but I've heard so many, more than I can even count on both my hands, when they start getting into the questions and this and that, and even the examples. How do you know you're not strapped face down to a bed in a mental asylum, or you know, whatever. It's done in such a way. I'm familiar with it enough now to know like when they do it. But it says, like you were saying, the lazy man's apologetic. Like, some of these guys don't think about what the context of what they're saying. They just know to say that now. That makes sense.
Right, and that's going to be the same with anybody trying to learn, like I said, the language. When you go to another country, you don't start off speaking in full sentences. You start with your little vocabulary dictionary, and you start saying the catchphrases that you know. Like when I went to Afghanistan, I learned a couple things to say in Farsi. I didn't really understand the language that well, but the longer I stayed there, the more I was able to have a conversation with somebody and carry my end of the conversation, just like a debate or an argument. You know, if I don't understand the language, it's going to be really difficult for me to continue on in the debate or the conversation, because I'm going to hear something that's like, I'm unfamiliar with that. I don't really know how to answer that. And when he asked me in the very beginning, 16, I mean, one, that was my first debate I've ever done, but also evidence, like I said, is something that, I mean, I wish I would have caught it a little bit sooner, but when he asked about evidence and given my answer a little quicker than I did, but yeah, I mean, the more you understand the language, the more you're going to not use those catchphrases or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's so fascinating walking you around with a little cocoon baby. Like, she's like a, you know, when the caterpillar goes into the, you know, the
oh yeah,
thing. It's like this. It's so,
it's so calming. I feel like I should do it to myself at night while I sleep.
Were you in the military? Is that why you were in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I was. Well, I still am actually. So I've been in for about 9 years.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, been in for a while.
Are you a career military guy or?
Yeah, for now. We'll see if that changes. I'm working on a second degree right now, so once I finish that, we'll see what I do.
Instead of bullets, you should throw Bibles at people. That'd be great.
I was military police, so I was more locking up the guys that were getting rowdy on base.
Oh, you were an MP? Really?
What's that?
You were an MP?
Yeah.
Spiffy. All right. Well, I'm glad we didn't meet in person then. I might catch an open hand chop to the Adam's apple or something. It's like,
I never roughed anybody up. I got really angry once because this dude was throwing rock. This is way before I was a believer, but this guy was throwing rocks at a puppy on base, and it just kind of really pissed me off because I've always loved dogs. I got like 3 of them in the house right now, walking, chilling. Yeah. So it kind of pissed me off when he did that, and I kind of had a pretty intense altercation with him, but that was the worst.
My dog just got fixed, and she's not happy about it. She's hiding somewhere, and I get her. but she's 3.5 pounds, so she can be anywhere. Really, I don't know.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's a little Chihuahua mix thing, but my dog's definitely an atheist. I totally indoctrinated her. But
Yeah.
but back to my original point. This has been a pretty, I would say, a pretty healthy discussion. And if you wanted to talk about other stuff in the future, I'd be glad to. And then we can hit each other later, however you want to go about it. But is there? I mean, gosh, there was one other thing, and it's really bothered me.
I'm just waiting for this question to come so I can answer it with a question, by the way.
I brain fart. I should have wrote it down. I was outside walking my dog, and she's not feeling it. She's pissed off at me. But
So you don't. So I mean, you don't obviously see a problem with not being, or like being able to know, or like epistemology. You don't see a problem with not having the ability to be absolutely certain about anything. There's nothing wrong with that.
My problem with that question is the absolutely certain portion of it, because when you start getting into that sort of thing, that phrase itself, those two words carry a lot of baggage. You know what I mean? So
Absolute certainty.
Right. I mean, certitude or certainty doesn't really have any relevance whether something's true or not, right? It's the confidence of that proposition. So I can be certain I'm a dragon in human form, but it doesn't mean I'm really a dragon in human form, right? So, I mean, being absolutely certain of something doesn't really mean it's true, at least not to me. I don't know how that would be, how you would be able to equate the two.
Well, I would say you couldn't be absolutely certain about anything that's not true, because then you wouldn't be absolutely certain about it. I mean, you could think that you're absolutely certain, but if it's not true, then how could you be absolutely certain about it? Or I'm sorry, I guess you could yourself be absolutely certain, but that doesn't make it, true or whatever. But I'm saying, are you saying that there is no way possible to be absolutely certain about anything? You can't. There's no way in which a person could be absolutely certain about anything.
I'm not making that statement.
Okay. So you think there are some things that we can be, 100% sure of?
The old go-to for us here on the old YouTubes is, I'm absolutely certain I'm not the God you worship.
I'm absolutely certain I'm not the God you worship.
As a side note to that, the lazy presupper will immediately go, how do you know that? Because that's the next question. But they're not even thinking that the statement, you know what I mean? So if you go, I'm certain I exist, or something along those lines, they'll be like, how do you know that? But if I say, I'm absolutely certain I'm not omniscient, or I'm not the God you worship, without thinking, they'll go, how do you know that? And then, and then they go, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
I didn't do that, by the way, I just stole it from somebody. But it seems cool. It seems like it works.
Yeah. I think it is important to, and once again, I mean, evidences are, I think, so far down the line, we really need to kind of talk about, hey, if we're going to argue or have a conversation, and we're both coming from two different perspectives, it's kind of a waste of time if neither of us are going to move towards, truth or agreement or whatever. So first we have to say, like, well, is there even such a thing as truth? Are we wasting our time here? Is truth relative? Is your truth the same as my truth? Like, is this a complete waste of time? So, like, is there truth that does not change? I would say yes. Obviously as a Christian, there are truths that do not change regardless of what you or I think about them. But, like, it is a question, like, how do I know that? How do I know that there are truths? What if, what if reality is different than what I think it is? Or what if reality is different than what you think it is? And truth doesn't necessarily work that way. That's just how we use truth, kind of, because it's pragmatic, it works. We're able to build stuff, create medicine, cure diseases, and live. But, I have problems with that as well, because I don't like pragmatism. But do you see what I mean? So I think in order to have a conversation about truth, we have to say, well, all right, what is truth? One, and can we access it? If there is truth and we can't access it, it's kind of useless. It doesn't really. It's just as bad as it being truth being relative. If we can't access that truth, does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. There's a slight, well, there's one thing I do want to point out. There's a difference between things being relative and things being subjective and things being arbitrary, and I do see presuppers equivocate between those quite a bit. But, excuse me. Sorry, I don't mean to be burping, but I'm drinking beer. So, and I'm not really a beer drinker.
What are you drinking?
It's embarrassing to say, but I'm drinking Coors Light at the moment. Because
man.
Some people came over during the one of the pay-per-views, and they brought over like an 18-pack of Coors Light, and either me or my roommate drink it, but I don't have anything else to drink in the house. That's not hard liquor, just straight up. So I'm like, I guess I'll drink beer. I don't want to, but it's here. So as far as
was that a distraction? Did you just use a dodge? Is that the atheist way of dodging? They talk about beer.
That's the atheist way of dodging.
Are you pre-supping me? You're using my own methods against me.
I'm absolutely certain Coors Light is worse than my hard liquor. I'm absolutely certain about. No. So as far as we're talking about a truth and stuff, when you say we're coming from different perspectives, I would be careful to put people like, that's starting down the road of I have a Christian worldview, you have a non-belief worldview, right? I generally try, even you, right? As a presupper, it's hard to, I have talked to many a presupper, off cam and stuff like that, but it's when I was saying I was familiar with it. I'm saying I knew the game from all the other guys, right? You're obviously not that guy, or at least not right now. So when it comes to perspectives, how I'm looking at the world, right? We can agree on certain things, right? We generally agree. I agree, even I exist. I agree you exist, right? We can't. I'm not saying we have absolute certainty. I'm saying we agree we're inhabiting the same reality. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not saying we can account for it. I'm saying we agree we're on the computer. Yakety smackety hoo ha, right? There are other minds. We're in a. Yeah, okay. So how I look at it is when you're beginning to posit something beyond what we agree on mutually, that is when a demonstration or an argument would need to come into play. So it's not before we can even jump to what is truth and all that good stuff. Do you get what I'm? Do you get kind of where I'm going with this?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Every time you say truth, I want you to define it.
So do I. Because I heard Presupper say truth is whatever God says, and I don't have to tell you what the problem with that statement is, do I?
Well, truth is whatever God says.
I heard that straight out of Side 10's mouth.
I've heard him say truth is that which corresponds to reality, or that which corresponds to the reality in the way that which God perceives it, because we all perceive reality differently.
I've heard him say that too. I could have sworn I've heard him say at some point he used to have a longer definition, but he shortened it like it's whatever God says. But you can be right. I'm not absolutely certain that he made the statement I said he made, but I know that I've heard a presupper say that. So,
I mean, would you say that reality or truth is whatever corresponds to reality?
Correspondence, yes.
Okay. And I think, and it makes sense. It seems rational to believe that, and this is the whole, well, all right, it's according to the reality that you live in, but how do you know you're perceiving it correctly?
Oh, are we getting into the question stuffs?
Well, not even, and I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, and I know The Matrix, are you a video game player at all?
Yes, I've actually, if you weren't going to come online, I was going to play Total War, so I'm glad you came.
Total War. you ever play any Final Fantasy?
Not the newer ones. When I was on the Nintendo of the 80s, yes, but not the newer ones.
Oh, okay, never mind. I was going to say there's one where he's like a dream in a celestial being's mind, so he's not actually real or whatever. Or he's like that one, but nobody's nobody's ever played the game, so nobody ever knows the analogy I'm giving. I'm like, oh, never mind. But I don't think you need to use some kind of crazy matrix analogy. You could use something that we come into contact with in our own world. I mean, you know, just as well as I do, there are people out there that cannot reason to logical conclusions.
How do I know I'm not one of those people?
You know? How do you not? How do you know?
I already know the question before you ask it, man.
Right. So.
No, okay.
But there's a problem with that because in order to verify you're not that person, you immediately have to employ your reasoning. That was one thing that somebody at the debate had a problem with in the Q&A. They had a problem with me saying that reasoning was circular. As a person who seems to know somewhat about syllogisms, I'm guessing you would say the same, that reasoning is circular. Do you have a problem with saying that?
Well, I'm trying to, hold on, I was writing down the other thing. Hold on a second. Let me jump back to the other thing, and then reason is circular. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, what was the other point you made before this one?
The what?
You made another point before this one. I'm writing them all down so I don't forget what you were saying. I got reason is circular, but you were making a point before this one about, how do I know I'm not perceiving it right?
Yeah, how do you know you're perceiving this reality? You trust your senses.
How can... Oh, I'm writing down the questions. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So are you... Okay, so are you... Go ahead, keep going, or let me know when you're done, and so that I can kind of...
Yeah. So, I mean, So you believe that reality is that which corresponds, or truth is that which corresponds to reality, but the problem is, how do I know I'm perceiving it correctly? Because, you know, I see colors, red, green, blue, but there's people that have been colorblind their whole life who don't even know about it until they take a test. And that's a way to validate, you know, that they're colorblind, but maybe there's not a test for some ways in which we perceive reality, and there's ways in which our perception is faulty. So we may not actually be experiencing reality the way in which we think we're experiencing it. Because we don't have exhaustive knowledge of the universe, of reality, or if there's a reality beyond this reality that we exist in, we don't have all the knowledge that there ever was or ever will be. We don't possess that. I don't think any human would ever say, like, oh, yeah, I possess all the knowledge in the world. So because we don't. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is the part, if you're Eric Hovind, where he goes, I'm going to ask you a question. What percentage of knowledge did I in the universe? And you go, I'll be gracious and give you 1%. And then he goes, out of all the 99% of the other knowledge in the universe, does that contradict what you're saying? And I just want to take Eric Hovind and shake him just through my monitor. But, okay, so, knowledge. Okay, I'm writing them all down. I'm going to go in order. Okay. Okay, so let me know when you're done so I can sort of address kind of what you were asking.
Why don't you go ahead and address those ones for now?
Okay, so how can I trust my senses, or how do I know I'm perceiving reality correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question itself I find to be a little flawed because my senses perceive reality, period, right? So you're assuming ultimate reality, quote unquote, right? What presuppers call ultimate reality, correct? Like there's a subjective perception, right, of reality that we have, but there's an ultimate reality, like you were saying, like I could be colorblind, but you know, in ultimate reality, there's reds and blues and greens, but the colorblind person would never know, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So from my personal perspective, if I'm sitting next to a colorblind guy, he's perceiving his reality is everything is black and white, right, or in shades of gray, correct? Mm-hmm. So if I'm perceiving colors, it doesn't. I don't say to myself, well, you know, you're not perceiving ultimate reality. When someone mentions ultimate reality, I question what is ultimate reality, right? So the question is, to me, is a little flawed to begin with. As far as trusting my senses, the case could be made for what other choice do you have. I mean, you know, it's your senses are your senses, right? I mean, what I get from presuppers is God made me know, which is a whole other, you know, can of worms, right? So I don't have to trust my senses because God made me know, right? To which, you know, I say, well, you know, by what mechanism could you know that, Or if he asks any questions, generally the presupper will go, well, you're just saying God can't do something. and then I'll go. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole sort of the presuppers tend to know that these questions are all sort of lead you down a path, right? But the fact of the matter is, even if I couldn't justify my senses, even if I couldn't justify reasoning or my knowledge, it doesn't by default mean the Christian worldview is true. That's why I think those questions are flawed. Now, I'll go through them. That way, it doesn't look like I'm dodging or anything. But
yeah, go ahead.
So, at its base, right, when you get to it, if you want to get to the epistem, can you hold on for 2 seconds? My nephew's calling me. He's coming over.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Oh.
This is probably going to look like a total dick move, but my nephew is going to be here in a couple of minutes, so when he knocks on the door, I'm going to have to jet. But I had him walk around. He was at the side entrance, so I said, dude, I'm going to hang up. Can you walk around the front of the building and then use the code to get in? It'll buy me some time to finish up what I'm doing. I didn't want to come back in the middle of your questions and just go, oh man, I got to bail. I'm sorry. I mean, that would look so horrible. You know what I mean? Tough questions. I got to go. When you talk about reasoning is circular, what do you mean? You mean like at its base, like when you reason about reasoning, you reason. You know what I mean? Like you don't. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like,
well, that there's a problem with relying only on like our human reasoning because. There's nothing wrong with a circle saying I'm going to validate my reasoning by using my reasoning. There's nothing wrong with a circle like that until there is an issue like with our own reasoning. We can't use it as an ultimate standard or an ultimate authority to get to truth because we ourselves can all admit, hey, I've been wrong before. I know other people that have been wrong before. I can look at my other experiences. Reasoning on its own is not a valid method as far as determining ultimate reality.
Very good.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna. Part of the reason why I find that question to be flawed is because when you say reasoning, use your reasoning to justify your reasoning, which is kind of generally what I hear. It's not that you're using your reasoning to justify reasoning. I think the question is formed incorrectly. You can use your reasoning about. You can use your reasoning. Hold on. I had it in my head. Bear with me for a second.
Okay.
You're not reasoning just to reason, right? You can reason about reasoning, right? It's a map from the place kind of thing. You're not reasoning about reasoning because that's a verb, right? But you can reason about reasoning. They're two different things. Does that make sense? Or did that?
No, I mean you don't have to say reason. I mean you could say using your intellect, using your brain, using your mental capacities in order to determine whether or not something's true. But at the outset, you have to assume that okay, these function properly. My brain, it's functioning properly. I'm able to reason to logical conclusions. I can do these things. You have to assume that before you can even begin.
Not if you have to ask my ex-girlfriend. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't know. I know people that I've talked to that are like, yo, man, I'm effing crazy, but I know people that don't have a lot of faith in their reasoning abilities, but I get what you're saying. Most people aren't like that. But go ahead.
But in order to validate, in order to say I am not a crazy person in a mental hospital right now, this is all real. I'm assuming that I'm able to reason, because the second I even begin to try to prove that I am not a crazy person, I'm imploring my reasoning immediately. It's unavoidable. I have to, by necessity.
Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Hey, come here.
That's okay.
Come here. Dun, dun,
Oh, wow.
dun, 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 dun. Atheist dog. Sorry.
It's a cute dog.
Yeah, thanks. So, shh. Hey, I'm gonna have to. Hey, go in a couple minutes. Stay off camera.
Yeah, you're fine whenever you want to go.
Sorry, well, I don't want my nephew walking behind me. But no, these are the good questions. But what happened? What happened?
What's up?
Oh, am I still on? Oh shoot, hold on. Well, that was weird, dude. Sorry.
You're still on.
My window's closed. I'm like, oh shit. I thought my Chrome crashed, so I was like, dude, now I look really bad. So again, what I think is going on here is, I think at its core we have a different sort of view on reason and reasoning, right? So I get what you're saying. I would venture to say that as a presupper, and this is the first time I've heard Sai say this, by the way. I'm basing it on Sai, because Sai is mainly the guy. But the idea with the presub, and tell me if I'm wrong, is you will admit, or however you want to put it, that your epistemology or whatever is circular, but yours is virtuous, right? Whereas everyone else's is the other one that starts with a V, vicious.
That's actually Van Til's terms that he coined, not Sai, but Sai uses it.
Which are completely made up. I mean, if you go into any philosophy class or I've taken logic and critical thinking in college, and where vicious and virtuous circularity is an economic term. It's not even like a philosophical term. Sai pulls that right out of his tuchus, and so to me, circularity is circularity, but just because Sai claims that he got his from a god, it doesn't mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you look kind of puzzled, but I'm
well, what I would say is an ultimate authority claim, and I've heard this before, it needs to be self-authenticating. If it can't stand on its own merit, then something else is the authority. And if you have time, I can give a quick example.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll go to like 5 minutes or so, and then we can make another part 3 of this in the future.
All right, let's say I'm the most intelligent man in the world. How are we going to prove this?
You live in Oregon. Proven. No, I'm kidding.
False. So, yeah, I chose to move here. That was, I can't argue with that. That was a mistake. No, yeah. So how are we going to prove that I'm the most intelligent man in the world?
Oh, are you asking me, or is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, I'm asking you. How are we going to prove that? I say I am the most intelligent man in the world. How are we going to prove this?
I don't have to. You're making the claim, so the burden of proof would be on you. It wouldn't be mine to prove or disprove. You're positive.
What if we're trying to ask the question, who's the smartest man in the world? How do we determine that?
I don't know. That I don't know enough about intelligence as a brain state or whatever or a function to make that assessment.
Okay. Well, I'll give what I think would be a good idea, and maybe you can comment along. But let's say there is a guy that we think, hey, this might be the smartest guy in the world. He might be, but we need to prove that he's the smartest guy in the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to design a test, and like an IQ test, all right? But it's going to be a little different than an IQ test. But this test is going to determine who the smartest man in the world is. All right. Well, who determines what kind of questions are going to be on that test? All right. Well, let's say it's like a board of some very, very intelligent people, and they design the test, and they determine the method with which to determine who is the smartest man in the world. Now, they do the test, they find, well, this guy is the smartest man in the world, but and they say like, hey, this guy is the smartest man in the world. But I would say that that man individually, yes, he may be the smartest man in the world, but collectively, that group that came up with the test is the ultimate authority in this reality that I've concocted of intelligence. They're the ultimate authority because they're the ones that created the test that determines who is the smartest. So it's not the man, it's that collective group of people. Now, if we were to say, well, how do we know, that this group of people is the smartest body that exists or whatever? Well, basically, in order to disprove it or prove it or whatever, there'd have to be some other kind of intelligence out there, whether another collective of people, to make that decision. So it needs to continue on to a level where an authority figure can validate its own intelligence. It doesn't need to go to some outside source to say, to tell me I am the smartest entity or collective in the known universe. Until it gets to that point, it's no ultimate authority because it keeps having to rely on other people to tell me I am the most intelligent. We are the most intelligent. So until we get to that point where it can say, it can make this statement and we can all agree, yes, it's true. I am the most intelligent person, body of people in the universe, and I can validate that claim on my own. I don't need you or any group of people to tell me that I'm the most intelligent. Does that make sense?
It does, but I find that there's a couple of issues that I had with that. So when it comes to IQ testing, and I get it's kind of an abstract kind of example you're giving, but
right.
when it comes to IQ testing and stuff like that, the assertion that the group that made the test collectively is smarter than the individual that's taking the test, that's not how you can't IQ doesn't work like that. It's not measured in this 5 people are smarter than the one person that's supposed to be smarter. Point in fact, the people that make the test are probably bright people, but then there are various different forms of IQ testing, right? When I took mine, I had to do a Rorschach, the ink blot test. I had to do shapes. They did all sorts of things, right? And there's different ones now, and the criteria are probably going to change. But that does not mean that the people that are making the test are smarter, either individually or in a group, right? You can I can set the people that set the limits on the Olympic track for long jumpers, right? Doesn't mean they're good long jumpers, right? But doesn't mean they can't set the parameters by which to measure what a good long jumper is. So I don't know. I would have stopped at the group of people. I think that's sort of a flawed kind of way to approach that. But even if I did grant that, to have the intelligence thing go back and back and back until there's a self-evident mind that you're getting into that special pleading area where you're creating a universal rule about this every intelligence you go back and back to a greater intelligence, and then you get to God essentially, which is what you're going to posit eventually, hopefully, or I have you completely misunderstood. But then after that, you go, oh well, it has to be self-evident, which I don't know how anybody would be able to know that or demonstrate that. However, when you get to that point and then you ask that question again, there has to be something greater. You go, oh no, that doesn't apply to God because He's already the greatest mind, right? It's self-evident. I don't know how anyone would even know that, or know that that's the criteria, or know that you know what I mean? Like, there's so many other questions. Once you get to God and you say the rules don't apply, essentially, it's special pleading. Is it, or is it not?
I don't know if that's. I don't have the definition of special pleading memorized, but that doesn't sound like a case of special pleading.
It's because you're saying.
Isn't that a general exception to a?
You're creating a special pleading. Unless I'm misunderstanding you, you're creating a universal criterion, right? Whereas, the person that's supposedly the smartest person in the world is being tested by this group of people. Well, collectively, they're smarter than him, from what you were saying. But there has to be someone smarter than them, and there has to be someone smarter than them, and you can go back and back all the way down the chain, right? Well, eventually, you get to a being that's so smart, eventually it leads back to God, right? You keep going back and back, right?
Well, I mean, in my scenario, we don't necessarily have to posit God yet.
Okay.
I'm just trying to demonstrate how any kind of ultimate authority claim must be able to self-authenticate itself, or else it falls into the egocentric predicament. If it can't, say like, if it can't verify itself, it's no ultimate authority claim. If it has to appeal to something else, what good is it?
Well, the idea that the IQ test in this example is an ultimate authority is that's not the case, because anything that is going to be measured, at least an IQ test, at least the one I got, it wasn't like the one in your Facebook page that pops up that your sister sends you. You know what I mean? Like, test your and easy questions. You know what I mean? Like, I had it was, for me, it was everything, and
it doesn't have to be a test, though. I don't want you to get stuck on the test, but it could even be like a board of people where they have you sit down and they interview and they judge your intelligence or something like that. What I'm just saying is,
but they would have to have a criteria to do that.
But the criteria is in themselves. They're saying correct. We're the ones determining what the criteria is.
Right.
So you have this one guy, and he says, "I'm the most intelligent man in the world." And you're like, "Well, prove that." And he's like, "All right, well, I'm the most intelligent man in the world, so I'm the most intelligent man in the world. I don't need to prove it to you. I'm the most intelligent person in the world." And it's like, well, no, we're not going to just trust you because you say you are, and maybe you can even demonstrate it in some ways, but I'm not as intelligent than you. You are more intelligent than me, but I'm not willing to make that leap and say you're the most intelligent person. Well, let's use a board of people, and they'll determine if you're the most intelligent person. But if they're determining if he's the most intelligent, he may be the most intelligent man in the world, but he's not the most intelligent entity. The group was. The board of judges that sat there and asked him questions and grilled him, that entity, that group of people, that is the ultimate authority determining intelligence in our make-believe universe that I've made.
There better be hamburger flavored ice cream in that universe.
That sounds horrible.
I would totally eat that, dude. I'm pretty sure I saw that in IKEA. The only flaw, because the only flaw I had in that is in that, I'm not saying it's an actual like test. What I mean is like a Scantron written down in school kind of thing. But like I said, you don't. There's no, like, when you test for IQ, right? I know you kind of want to do it, but when you test for IQ, as far as I know, I don't think there's a max on the test, right? You can't score 100% and know your IQ, right? It kind of gauges it, and there's a spectrum and shit like that. But the people that it's like I said before, the people that come up with the criteria of a gifted long jumper, for example, or a weightlifter, to who gets the gold medal or this and that, or whatever the distance is, those guys aren't necessarily have to be good long jumpers themselves, but they understand, right, the criteria by which a long jumper would need, but by the distance. They don't have to be long jumpers themselves, right? So
right, but
they don't have to be smarter. The group itself, it doesn't make any sense to say, because there are 5 separate entities on this board per se. They're not collectively smarter, but they are setting a criteria to measure whatever his IQ is. And they can compare.
Well, I don't think long jumping is a good analogy, and track in general, because track, what a good distance, and I did track all 4 years. A good distance in like triple jump was my vet. I knew what a good distance in triple jump was because I knew the record of the person who had said it before me.
Correct.
And so on. You could look at the world record. Right. And I may not even, let's say I go to a competition in triple jump and I get 5th place, and I know another guy that got 4th place, and I even know another guy that got 2nd place. If there's a 5th place, a 4th place, and a 2nd place, mm-hmm. there must be a 1st place. If there is no 1st place, then 2nd place is 1st place. And if there's no 2nd and 1st place, then 3rd place is 1st place. There is a 1st place by necessity.
I understand what you're saying.
Go ahead. And that's why I think the track analogy kind of fails, because the person who judges whether or not it's a good distance is the person who did the greatest distance.
Right. Okay. But the idea is that okay. Here's what I get by that. So, with IQ, for example, the smartest guy in the world, the smartest guy in the world, his IQ was set by the guy previously, right? So some guy got 315. Well, that's your 1st place until someone gets a higher IQ than 315, right? He was that's now the quote unquote measurable, IQ of the smartest person in the world. Number I pulled out of my tucks. All right, but much in the same way, that's what I was getting at with the long jump thing. It's not necessarily saying that people that the group that are scoring the test or came up with the test are smarter than the person that's taking the test, but they can set up a criteria to measure the aptitude that he's exhibiting of his intellect. Much like I said, the triple jump. You triple jumped and you're in the military? Is there anything you don't do? I mean, you drink, you're in the military, and you did track. With the exception of this Christianity thing, he's kind of a cool guy. I don't get it.
Actually, what's funny is the pastor of my church that I moved up here to be a part of, ex-professional MMA fighter.
Is he really?
I watched his last professional fight a couple years ago, actually.
Was he like on a literal pay-per-view, or was he like in a sport?
He was in the Bellator.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, the power of Christ compels you, elbow.
It's kind of funny. His name was actually, I don't know if I should say his name or not. I don't know if he'd appreciate that, but
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, this is kind of live, so maybe I shouldn't say his name. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure. I don't know if he would care, but I don't think anyone would have a problem with it anyway. And if they did, who cares?
Yeah.
He's a UFC guy. Why would he care?
So maybe it's not the collective, the group, or whatever. What about it's the test? The test itself is the ultimate authority of who's the most intelligent person. Does that help? I don't know if that helps or not, but the test is the one saying this is the smartest guy. Now,
sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, well, it's not the group. The group came up with the test, but the test itself, because he took it, the test spit out a score. Now this test, this magical test, this entity, the test, this is what determines who is intelligent and who is the most intelligent. It's this test. But, that is the new thing, giving its own, that's the new ultimate authority, I guess, for judging intelligence is the test. Not the man who took the test, but the test itself. Would that help in the analogy?
I get what you're saying. It would only be considered an ultimate authority if the people that made that test would be able to demonstrate that, right? So when it comes to IQ, intellect, and all these measurable things, right, I know this is kind of an abstract kind of hypothetical, but these things change over time, right? So an IQ test in 1950 is not going to be the same as it is in 1990, and not going to be the same as it is now, right? So, when you sort of get into like I don't want to get into the, biology of it because I'm not a biologist, but when you get into like brain stuffs, especially the sciences and measuring things and what the brain's capable of, these things will change over time. So it couldn't possibly, I don't think, any test like that would be the quote unquote ultimate authority of anything, because 10 years from now that test is probably going to change.
It's going to need a new one to replace it.
It's going to evolve. But even if you go right now, if you go to, there's not just one test that's the test, the arbiter test, right? There's many, scholarly IQ tests that you can have, and so none of them are really, as to my knowledge, better than the other. They may test things in different ways, or some may use the ink blot thing, like the Rorschach test. Some may not. So I don't know if it'd be even fair to say there was a test that was, the ultimate authority. Just the idea of an ultimate authority is sort of getting in a sort of foggy vocabulary for me, because I wouldn't assume there'd be an ultimate authority to that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another way to kind of make the analogy work, but maybe it's one that I'll have to abandon for now, because I'm trying to think of a way that it would kind of make sense and come across, but I see it's not, that you're not understanding it the way I am, and it may be the way in which we already view the world. I won't say worldview. So maybe it's just the way, in which we see the world, and maybe that's where the difference is.
Sure.
Maybe I just have to come up with a better analogy. I mean, it makes sense to me that if we're trying to determine the intelligence, I mean, somebody's got to be able to figure out a way to do that. I mean, how are they going to do that? Well, we're going to have to appeal to something that is kind of an ultimate standard. something that's obviously not relative if we're trying to get at who is the most intelligent person, who is the smartest person in the world. Well, how do we determine that? Well, maybe the smartest person in the world should be able to validate their own intelligence. I don't know. Maybe it's got to be a collective of people, maybe a test. Maybe it doesn't matter what it is, but maybe you can understand that there's got to be some way to determine that, if that makes sense.
That's where we differ. I don't know if there must be a way.
Right. I'm not saying it's a must happen, but in the analogy, we're the people trying to. All right, this is our goal. We need to find out who the smartest man in the world is. Maybe we've been commissioned by the president of the United States, to find the smartest person in the world so he can be on his cabinet. But we're like, well, how do we determine this? What kind of method are we going to use?
Good question.
So
I would.
What's that?
That's a good question. I would gather to say in that instance there would be at least a dozen or so people that was, doctors and teams of people that would come up and go, our test is the,
You and me. Here's what I would say is that you and me would not be the ones, even if we were commissioned by the president, we ourselves would not be the ones who would come up with the answer to that question. You and me would try to find somebody who is intelligent. We would appeal to an authority greater than ourselves in the realm of intelligence. We would go try to find somebody who has, their doctorates in neurology, cosmology, biology, all these different things. We're trying to get the world's experts together because we on ourselves, we know, we're not the most intelligent people in the world. But we know there are people out there smarter than us. Let's gather them, and they can kind of figure this out for us. We can just be kind of in charge of getting them together. I'm smart enough to figure that out, maybe, But we're still having to appeal to an authority. And when I say authority, I mean an authority in the realm of intelligence.
Yeah,
we're gonna look to them because we're not that smart. Maybe you think you're super smart, but I have no problem saying I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So I'm gonna go try to find somebody else.
I'm killing brain cells as we speak, man. I can't be that smart.
Yeah, I don't know does beer kill brain cells? Only if you drink a lot of it.
It makes me fat. So,
no.
I mean, you're a younger dude. I mean, I gather I'm older than you. So, I get fat by proxy. Like the older I am, I just get fat for no reason now. So, like I just get like love handles and a gut, and it doesn't matter.
my dad was pretty skinny until he hit 40. So I got about maybe 15 more years before that happens, roughly.
Yeah, I got 5 months before that happened. So.
My dad was like 6'4", 300 pounds. He's pretty huge.
No kidding. That's like freaking like Hulk Hogan, dude.
Actually, what's funny? You said that he looks like Hulk Hogan when he shaves his beard like that.
Does he really?
He lives in Thailand now, and he gets mistaken for Hulk Hogan when he cuts his beard like that.
He should just go for it, man. He's got to be like
hey, brother.
The biggest person in Thailand. He's got to be like a giant.
Oh, he probably is.
That's pretty crazy. That's cool. He's
just like pushing people out of the way with his hands as he walks down the street.
Giving people big boots.
Get out of the way. Yeah.
Is he like I mean, I don't mean to cornhole you, but he's like a missionary or something, or?
No, he retired and decided to leave America.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Living the good life or whatever out there.
So, I am gonna have to go. It sucks to say, because this was an awesome conversation, and I'd love to do more if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm a pretty good busy guy. I work a full-time job, and I go to school, and sometimes I have to do, or I prepare sermons for church and stuff. So, and obviously I have a daughter and a wife and everything. So I'm kind of busy. But this week I happen to catch up on all my school and everything, and I'm way ahead. So.
Well, I got you to respond to me like every 12 seconds, so that's something.
Yeah, I was kind of bored today. I really had nothing to do. I was watching the baby. Everybody's gone.
You know what? You're a younger guy, but have you ever heard of that movie Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood?
Yes, I have.
That is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I was actually watching that while you were like, "Hey man, do you want to do the hangout?" I was right at the end, and stuff, and I was like, that's what took me so long, because I was like, I'm finishing this movie. I don't care. It's one of my favorite movies ever. So I freaking love that movie.
It's a good movie.
It's awesome. I can go without the tiny shorts and all, but it was 86 when it came out. So
yeah.
But no, I
used to be a huge movie buff.
Oh yeah, what happened, kids? School?
Priorities, the shift in priorities for sure. Now I tend to read a lot more than anything. That's one thing when you know what, I did not do, to be 100% honest, that good in high school. And for some reason, shortly after I became a Christian, I think it has to do with me coming to faith in Christ, but some people may say, oh, you just grew up or whatever. But I gained a thirst for knowledge and reading, and I'm reading about 6 different books right now.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
I'm watching at least 6 different TV shows. Does that count?
I'm not a huge TV watcher, but lately I have been into Wayward Pines
I heard that was good.
and 11/23/60 or 11/22/63.
I've
The
never.
Steve, it's a Hulu original that it's a novel that Stephen King wrote, but they adapted it into a series. It was kind of
Oh, no.
good. Yeah, it's actually.
Are you allowed to watch that, or I mean, is there any like GDC type rules you can't like do? I mean, you go drinking.
You know what? The one thing I do avoid, it's something that it's just a personal struggle for me as a Christian, is when I grew up, I had access to a computer as a teenager that my dad did not limit, and I
How
and
was
I don't think I need to go into detail as to what kind of sins I was plunged into as a adolescent.
right?
But that is something that I constantly struggle with. So like, unfortunately, as much of a huge X-Men fan and Marvel fan as I am, Deadpool is something that I avoided just because.
Good.
What's that?
I just finished watching it again yesterday. It was so good.
I'm sure it's great, and maybe someday I'll watch like a version that they put out on TV. But just because I don't want to struggle in that way,
It's
because
fantastic. Next part is that
what's that?
is it there's only like one part where they're like sort of doing it. Is that what you're getting at, or
Yeah, it's the nudity. I just try to avoid it altogether.
there is
A
no
lot of There's no nudity in Deadpool.
there's no nudity in Deadpool.
Really?
Hey Matt,
There isn't.
there isn't, right? Yeah, my nephew
Oh.
confirms there's nudity. There's
Oh.
a montage of them having sex in the beginning, but
Oh.
there's no nudity, and it's more comical. It's like it's cut in real fast segments, and they're not really. It's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
There's just some things that I avoid for my own personal sanctification, just because some of those sins are very destructive. Just like if I struggled with drugs before I became a Christian, I would not spend a whole lot of time, in places where it would make me struggle in that way.
Damn.
Or if I was an alcoholic beforehand, I wouldn't go to bars all the time.
Damn. Just with today and yesterday, I've already, in your eyes, I've already messed up. So.
Well, you know what? I can tell you I mess up all the time, and that's the cool thing. And it was deaf on me for so many years, and I'm not sure this is probably falling deaf on yours too, because I heard this a million times. I just never heard it. Is that I always thought Christians were perfect or thought they were perfect and all these things, but it's not a perfection that we think we have, but it's that Jesus was perfect, and he died for us. And I know Sam Harris kind of laughs at that and thinks human sacrifice is silly, but basically he lived a perfect life on our behalf, and that way I don't have to bear the guilt and the burden of having to live this perfect life. I mess up all the time, and my wife and my friends are well aware of the struggles that I have and the ways in which I fail almost every single day.
When I got my computer, my new one, the guy goes, the salesman always goes, "Hey man, what are you going to use your computer for?" You know what I mean? And I looked him dead in the eye and I go, "Video games and pornography." And he just kind of looked at me for 10 seconds, and I'm like, "What do you use it for?" And then he just starts to, he's like, "Oh, okay." But I just wanted to see what his reaction would be. But the pro tip of the day, like when anyone comes in someone's house, right? The pro tip of the day when you go to a guy's house is never, ever, 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 ever sit in a guy's computer chair. Ever. Never do it. Universe that's watching this, never do it. It's bad.
But having been an atheist up until the age of, I think I was 22, I know exactly why you don't do that.
Okay, I'm 39, right? And back when I was, back in my day, there was no internet for me, right? So when you're just like an adolescent or teenager and you're foaming at the mouth and this and that, like you're hoping like someone threw a Playboy away and you're like, a dumpster dive, get that Playboy or whatever. And then, you moved on to like, dial up, right? And nothing's worse than like seeing like it's all loading up, and you're just like, I see an ankle. Don't.
Wow.
So with high speed connections and HDs and stuff, it's like I feel like I've struggled long enough, man. That's all good. I know I know our different belief systems, prevent you from being like me, which is probably a boon to you, but.
Yeah, I don't see it as a prevention or a you can't do this anymore. I see it as a freedom to where I'm not, because I'll tell you right now, and I would say I still am, but I was addicted to pornography. I just didn't want to say that for the longest time, but I was and am addicted to pornography. So I see it more as a freedom, that it was something that kind of enslaved me, and it was like I always felt the shame from it. And sometimes driving home, I knew going home, I'm going to do this. And I don't want to, but I know I'm going to do this. There's no way I'm not going to. And I hate that about myself. And slowly, over my walk with Christ, he's been slowly giving me freedom for that, where I don't, I'm not as enslaved to that sin that I was, to where it was like, this is going to happen. I can't avoid it. It's just part of my nature of who I am as a human being. This is going to happen when I get home. It's unavoidable.
Yeah, I come from the mindset where I'm driving home and I'm like, I'm so doing this. See, the problem with that whole aspect is people, I worked at a bar for a long time, and people
Me too.
stuff, and they're like, hey man, you blah, 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 you don't get laid, and you beat off all the time, this and that. And I was like, yeah, but if I wasn't so good at it, I wouldn't care. But I'm awesome, right? So like, why wouldn't? But for someone like me, I don't know how you would. Sexual addiction or porn, online addiction or anything along those lines. For me, I don't know enough about it to make any sort of like factual statements or what I think. I say factual subjectively or whatever. I don't know how you want to put it, dude. I don't want to contradict myself, but I don't want to get into that whole thing. My opinion, my straight opinion, from what I know so far, is from what I've heard, is addiction sort of gets into that. It gets into that addiction kind of definition when it starts to interfere with aspects of your life that are normal, like work or personal responsibility, where it's like where it's detracting from aspects of your life where you would be living a healthy, sort of like a productive life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would take it further and say addiction is when it's I cannot not do it.
Right.
Like I could not, a couple years ago, I was in a place, even as a Christian, where I could not watch pornography. Does that make sense? That eventually, even though I didn't want to do it,
okay,
or said I didn't want to do it,
sure,
may have been a hard issue where I still did want to do it a little bit.
right,
I couldn't avoid it. I could not do it. Eventually, I would slip and I would watch pornography at some point. It's going to happen.
okay.
So I would say that's more of an addiction. Is that it's something that I cannot not do. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but excuse me. But I mean, if you say it's part of your nature, then you're kind of blaming yourself for something you have no control over. I mean, if it's part of your nature, that's you know what I mean. Like you would be saying, if saying I'm having these urges and doing this, it's part of my nature, right? I'll be a flawed nature, right, or whatever. It's still part of my nature. So why, it seems like you're setting yourself up in an opposition, of what comes naturally to you.
Well, I think even the Bible affirms that naturally we have a tendency towards sin or doing the wrong things. We have this natural tendency to run from God, engage in adultery, which I think watching pornography is adultery, drunkenness, gluttony, all these things, theft, murder, hatred, all these things. We have a tendency towards them. I think they're all part of our nature, all part of human nature. But I also think, as a Christian, God begins to work and move in the life of a believer in order to conform them more to the image of Christ, to where they don't want to do those things anymore. And I can tell you, as a non-believer, there were things that I was happy about doing, even especially being in the military, man. Oh my gosh, being in the military.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, it's even hard now as a Christian still being in the military. It's hard to I feel like a failure every day in the ways in which I talk. Just my vocabulary sometimes being in the
Don't
military.
live
It's
like
like,
that.
oh man,
You're
what's
such a good
that?
guy. Don't live like that. Don't.
Well, I don't think the Bible anywhere specifically says that you shouldn't curse, but I don't think it helps people when I do curse. I think for some people it's confusing. They're like, oh, you're a Christian, but you curse. And obviously, I don't think it's a curse or it's a sin to curse. I don't think saying the F word is a sin. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. That's crazy. But unfortunately, we live in America, and for some people, that would be a bit of a stumbling block if they heard me dropping the F bomb every two sentences. They'd be like, you're a Christian, but you curse all the time. So I try not to do it, not because the Bible says so, but because other people, it may make them weird or whatever about it.
I,
You know,
I,
I do it more for the benefit of others.
I worked with a couple of guys that are super Christian,
Mhm.
and I called it. This guy particularly, I call him Boy Scout because he looks like the guy in front of the insurance brochure with the Ken doll type, with the wife and the kid and the dog, like you would see like in a life insurance brochure, man.
Oh yeah.
Like he's a poster boy for that. I remember they had him and his other friends. They had a bachelor party, quote unquote, and he goes, "Yeah, we couldn't, we didn't know what to do because we were Christians, so we just went and played. We just went and played pool for a while, and then when it got too late, like at around 10, we didn't know what to do because the bad things happen after 10 apparently, and then so we went to go back to some guy's house, and he goes." And then everyone just started to drink, so it wasn't for me. I didn't want to drink, so I went home. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, cool, whatever floats your boat. But there's another part of my brain that goes, that sounds like the worst bachelor party ever. You know what I mean? And I'm not even saying you got to go out and do anything raunchy. I'm just saying, it's like, wow, we had a crazy time at the Applebee's. Like, ooh, it's like, I mean, there's recognizing, as a non-believer, sin isn't really a thing for me, even though you might believe that it really is. But
Is guilt a real thing for you?
what do you mean by real? Like, do I feel guilty sometimes?
Yeah.
Then yes, I don't know what you mean by real though, but
Well, I mean, is it just something you experience, or you would say, yeah, sometimes I feel guilt or guilty for something that I've done?
I think it's both to that
Okay.
question. Experience guilt because yeah, I mean that what you described the second part is experiencing guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all that
Well,
writing on my heart. I don't know where that came from. It just hurts right there in this writing. There's a paragraph right here on my heart. I said, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I'm just,
my bachelor party, I had a chair thrown at my face, and it almost knocked my front tooth out.
oh, no kidding. See,
Yeah.
I've been there for that. See, I wish I could have met you like 7 years ago. You sound like a party.
I sound what?
You sound like a party. Like 7 years ago when you were about.
I still love to party and have fun. I mean,
Hey,
Jesus, you know what? I actually just watched something from Timothy Keller, and he was talking about Jesus turning water into wine. And that was Jesus's very first miracle. So he was talking about if you were going to run a political campaign, the very first thing you do kind of makes a statement about what you're about, what your mission's about, or whatever, what your political campaign is going to be about. The very first thing that Jesus did was to keep the party going. The wine had run out. There was no more wine. His very first miracle, his step onto the stage, was to keep the party going, essentially.
he was a hippie.
Well, I don't necessarily know if I'd identify him with a hippie from the 70s.
No. I mean, in the love sense, and I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not an Old or New Testament scholar. There are some people I know that are like, I don't care what the New or Old Testament says. They just go, I just follow what Jesus says, and I'm just like, that's the new thing out here. I live in California, so there's a lot of people that either they got the big toe in the pool, but they won't. You know what I mean? So, I mean,
Yeah, that's weird. Because I mean, it's the same God. If you're a Trinitarian Christian, you believe that when God spoke in the Old Testament, that was Jesus, that was the Holy Spirit, that was God speaking. Same God, doesn't change.
we agree
From old
on
to new.
something. The discussion can't lead to to good things. We agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable with certain things. They have a certain cognitive dissonance about certain things, and it's not a matter of me in this instance beating. I never went into any sort of like the Bible says this is a contradiction. There was not any of that actually. I was just asking questions, in a sense, and that's great. But you say this, and I'm just nothing bad, nothing like no trap questions. I was honestly curious of their position, right? And then they get to even raise a question, right? Any statement ending in a question mark to them at all is like, oh, you're closed-minded. I just care what Jesus says. I don't follow the Bible. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like,
that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I've heard it several times.
Oh no, I've experienced it sometimes too. It's kind of weird.
But anyway,
I mean, and me myself, I've never been stumped, or nobody's ever shown me something from the Old or New Testament where I've been like, oh, my Bible says that. Oh, my whole faith is shaken now. It's like, I mean, usually, I see something at first glance and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Look into it a little bit or read the entire context of what exactly they were saying. Like, Bernie even has a video online. The guy I debated of a verse in Judges, and he talks about this is so horrible. God condones this and everything. And I was like, I never heard of that. Let me read that real quick. And I pulled out my Bible and read the whole story. I was like, yeah. Nowhere in there did it say that God condoned the act. It's just something that happened. It was a historical narrative. And I think a lot of people could benefit from like a lesson or a class in hermeneutics, just basic reading, like how to read something,
Yeah.
reading comprehension class or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they can maybe make the case that something horrific happened and God allowed it by not whatever.
Right. I think that'd be a much easier case to make. God allowed this to happen.
Right. Right. No, I get what you're saying. Sometimes it's like a story and people are like, whatever. But so a long time ago when I was in high school, right, so approximately 100, 150 years ago, one of my neighbors, we were having this conversation and about God back then. And I was like 14 and he was like 16 or something. And he goes, God is responsible for all existence, right, including yours. And I go, all right, it's a pretty general statement to make. You know what I mean? Like, how could you possibly know that? And he goes, you exist, don't you? And I was like, and he like walks away all confidently and stuff. Like he just drops the mic. And I'm all, is that so? And I'm like, that was presup before it was presup. Not the argument itself, but it's a very presuppy kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like a
very presuppy vibe.
It's a presuppy vibe. It's like when somebody makes a claim about something to me, and this is something we could probably get to later. I go, in that particular instance, like years later, I go, if the acknowledgement of my existence is a demonstration, I'm here, right? Yes, my existence is demonstrated because you whatever. But any causes of that is a different thing. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to attack on a cause just because you couldn't give another one or whatever the case. It's a long. So we can get into that later. But anyway, I actually have to go. About 45 minutes longer than I planned on, but are you Sundays? You're probably busy, right?
Actually, yeah, it kind of depends.
On my channel, I do a show with two other guys called Heretical Weekends because we're all heretics.
I saw that. Yeah.
You're more. I mean, it's invite only, but if you're free, you're more than welcome to come on if you're interested. We are.
I don't know if you'd fit the definition of a heretic.
It's tongue in cheek. Hold on a second. Let me give you one more thing before we go, and maybe you can. No, that's not it. One of the guys. Okay, so Old Testament and Daughters Part 2. Jephthah. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
Yeah, that's actually the verse he was talking about. That's Judges, 11:39?
It's an article from one of the guys on my show, his blog. Okay, is it really? So that's funny. Judges chapter 11. Yeah. So
I have it open right here.
So we used to we tried to do this thing called effed up Bible stories, which aren't anything that they're just messed up stories. I think we did one with like that dude's concubine that got chopped up in like 11 parts and sent to like the different tribes. It's in my videos or whatever, but we've had other Christians on before that that aren't combative or whatever, and we're all really nice guys. But I'd love to do either more one-on-one hangouts with you of any topic that you want, or you're more than welcome to come back to the show. It's no big deal to me. You're the first person I ever met that I don't want to shake violently, so which is awesome. Not that I could, because you're in the military. You can probably kill me with and stuff, but yeah, dude, this has been a good call, a good meeting. Obviously we disagree on stuff, but how is your feeling?
Say that again. You kind of broke up a little bit.
I said we obviously disagree on stuff, but ultimately, what was your feeling about the hangout itself? Like, how it went. Comfortable.
I thought it went good, and you were really gracious, and I'd be more than willing to do it again. You weren't that hostile or anything. You didn't say that I could benefit from a good butt whooping or anything like that.
I said not that I couldn't, but yeah, let me drive up to Oregon right now with my shotgun. But no, yeah, it's and like I said, I done not that many one-on-ones. I think we did. And the last time I did it, the guy continued to like save the video and like he would post the link like he won some great debate, and I tried to explain to him before the video started. I go, hey, look, man, I'm here to talk. I'm here to exchange ideas. Now, if you want like a debate, whatever, that's a different story. But is that really going to get us anywhere? Or because I really want to kind of understand your position. And we had this conversation and stuff, and then for the next year after that, he posted this video like he won the Super Bowl, like, oh, I trounced this guy and this and that. I'm like, wow, dude, that's a really asshole thing to do, So
I feel like that's how this conversation went.
What do you mean? I'm gonna post. I'm gonna post. Dude, this guy he blew it. I totally blew it. No, it's cool. Mostly our show takes place every other weekend. We missed last
on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be they're on the East Coast, or they're in Eastern time, so they're 3 hours ahead. So I don't know. I assume you're in church Sunday.
That's a good assumption.
Yeah, I don't know what your hours are, but if we know we have a guest, we can make adjustments for that. So, but all in all, I had a great time. So thank you for stopping by and chit chatting. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and now I'm gonna enjoy a real beer here.
Oh!
Let's see. Oh, dang it! I messed it up. Yeah, my bartender skills have been lacking.
Gotcha. No worries, man. You still got me beat. I'm gonna have more of this cheesy tea beer. So, all right, buddy. Well, you have the great rest of your Saturday. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Well, cheers and amen.
Cheers. Yeah, hallelujah.
All right, bye.